So this week we broke major international news. At the same time that Justin Trudeau was planning to quit the combat mission against the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, he was planning to turn 7 Canadian military bases into long-term refugee camps. An access to information document we received shows those plans have become more detailed, with budgets and breakdowns for where up to 6,000 Muslim migrants would be warehoused for months at a time. The icing on the cake was that taxpayers would even pay for Korans and mosques to be built on these military bases. Well, the story made news in Washington, D.C., New York, and even London, England. But a total media blackout here in Canada, even though we published our source document, the access to information records themselves, right on our website for any other journalist to look at. So we had foreign interest, but no Canadian media interest. Well, regular Canadians were interested. They were outraged. More than 100,000 people read the story or the email or watched our video on the subject. We also got letters from soldiers at both CFB Kingston and CFB Valcartier with more details, but no other media interest for days. Well, today, our friend Anthony Fury at the Toronto Sun did a follow-up to our story, the first that I've seen in all of Canada. So congrats to him. Here's the story. Military bases no longer to house massive refugee influx, but soldiers can't return just yet. Really? So the military bases will no longer house refugees? Well, could be. I mean, the planning document we showed was more than a month old. Maybe plans had changed. But we did get confirmation that they're moving soldiers out of bases to make room for Syrians. I received emails from soldiers this week, including an email about the mosque being planned in Valcartier. So military bases no longer to house massive refugees influx, but soldiers can't return just yet. Well, okay. Looks like the Sun has the scoop to rebut our scoop. Here's the first sentence of their story. The government is no longer preparing to house a sizable number of refugees at military bases, the Canadian Forces has confirmed. Oh, well, that's a relief, I guess. We didn't get our story wrong. We quoted our documents accurately, showing 7 Canadian Forces bases were making plans. The Sun just says that's, quote, no longer happening. I guess the plans were called off, maybe even in response to our story. I don't know. Here, let me read some more from their story. Bases in Meaford, Borden, Petawawa, Trenton, and Montreal have been removed from a state of high readiness, leaving only Kingston and Valcartier on alert for refugees. So Kingston and Valcartier are still on alert for refugees. So according to the plans that we published, that's 3,600 refugees in those 2 bases alone. So they're still on alert for them. Now, I know this because, as we showed you yesterday, CFB Kingston is kicking out its soldiers and putting them up in hotels, like the Ambassador Hotel in Kingston. We know this. And CFB Valcartier is busy working on the mosque. We know this as of yesterday. But no mention of government-paid mosques and Korans in the Sun story. That's okay. But take one more look at that headline. Military bases no longer to house massive refugee influx, but soldiers can't return just yet. But buried in the story is that acknowledgement that CFB Valcartier and Kingston are still standing by for refugees. So what's true here? It's tough to say. I don't trust our military brass anymore. I mean, they're politicians, or at least they're answering to liberal politicians. John McCallum, the Liberal immigration minister, has made a fiasco of things, changing plans every week, clueless, erratic. He's a mess. Here's what we know for sure. The military has made plans to turn 7 bases into refugee camps, complete with free Korans and taxpayer-funded mosques. We know that for a fact. We know for a fact the military is kicking out soldiers from CFB Valcartier and CFB Kingston, and we know they will even admit that to the Sun. We know from soldiers who tell us they're still being told to continue as if the refugees are coming to those 2 bases. And we know that the mosque plans are proceeding too. What we still don't know is how the mainstream media can ignore this story, or even how the Toronto Sun, a newspaper that I love actually, can write the headline, "Military bases no longer to house massive refugee influx," when all the evidence, including their own story, points to the contrary. For the Rebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant.